Dear friends of the Danish Institute in Athens, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, Kalispera. I'm Marianne Pade. I'm chair of the board of the Danish Institute, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here at the Acropolis Museum for the annual meeting of the Institute. 2025 was a busy year at the Danish Institute. Our director, Sanne Hoffmann, and our vice director, Rasmus Sevensted, were in charge of an impressive program, and DIA hosted and participated in a true cornucopia of research and cultural activities. As you will hear later this evening, the Danish Institute has a wide network of Greek, Danish, and international collaborations which enable us to engage in a broad range of activities, ranging from film projections, concerts, teaching, publications, seminars, and lecture series on archaeology, ancient history, art history, reception study, oral storytelling, and much more. Sanne Hoffmann will tell you more about that in a moment, but before I give the word to her, I'll take the occasion to thank the efforts and the Greek Ministry of Culture which have supported our work, and I also thank the Danish ministries and private foundations which have supported us financially, and not least the entire staff of the Danish Institute in Athens for their amazing work. And now I give the word to the Institute's director, Dr. Sanne Hoffmann. Thank you for your attention.
Αγαπητοί και εκλεκτοί συνάδελφοι, αγαπητές και εκλεκτές συνάδελφοι, αξιότιμοι προσκεκλημένοι, αξιότιμες προσκεκλημένες και φίλοι και φίλες του Ινστιτούτου της Δανίας στην Αθήνα. Είναι για μένα μεγάλη χαρά και ιδιαίτερη τιμή να σας καλωσορίσω όλους απόψε στην 34η ετήσια ανοιχτή συνέλευση του Ινστιτούτου της Δανίας στην Αθήνα. Πρώτα απ' όλα, εκ μέρους του Ινστιτούτου και όλων των συνεργατών μας, θα ήθελα να εκφράσω τις θερμότερες ευχαριστίες μας προς το Ελληνικό Υπουργείο Πολιτισμός και Αθλητισμός, καθώς και προς όλες τις εφορίες αρχαιοτήτων, με τις οποίες είχαμε την ευκαιρία να συνεργαστούμε το 2025, αλλά και επί πολλά προηγούμενα έτη και με όποιες προσβλέπουμε στην συνέχιση της συνεργασίας μας και στο μέλλον. Θεωρούμε μεγάλη τιμή να αποστελούμε μέρος των θετικών και σημαντικών συνεργασιών μεταξύ των ξένων Ινστιτούτων, του Ελληνικού Υπουργείου και των εφοριών και εκφράσουμε την βαθύτατη ευγνωμοσύνη μας προς όλους όσοι είχαμε την χαρά και το προνόμιο να συνεργαστούμε. Dear esteemed colleagues, honored guests and friends of the Danish Institute, it is a great pleasure and privilege for me to welcome you all this evening to the 34th annual open meeting of the Danish Institute at Athens. First, and most important, on behalf of the Institute and all our associates, I would again like to send our warmest thanks to the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sport and all the archaeological efforts which we have had the opportunity to collaborate with in 2025, as well as many of the years before, and who we look forward to continue our collaborations with in the future. We consider it a great honor to be part of the positive and important collaborations between the foreign institutes and the Greek Ministry and the efforts, and extend our deepest gratitude to all that we've had the pleasure and privilege of working with. I also wish to acknowledge and thank all the members of the board of the Danish Institute at Athens for their consistent support. And we are also very grateful to the conglomerate of institutions they represent, which administer, facilitate, and support us. A special thank goes, of course, to the staff of the Institute of 2025 for consistently putting in hard work and positivity, keeping us steady and moving forward. And this year we were joined by Katerina Fotopoulos, who dove headfirst into the job this September and has been a most energetic and welcome addition to our small group. We find our extended colleagues at the Nordic Library, where many thanks are owed to head librarian Patrick Talatas and research librarian Eddie Björklov for always offering valuable help on research for us researchers at the Institute. as well as our many residents who ask both practical and research questions, always dutifully answered by the welcoming and competent staff. And 2025 marked yet another increase in use of the Nordic Library from the previous record of 2024, a continuous testament to the attractive academic environment provided not only for Nordic scholars, but also Greek and foreign scholars who are members of the various research institutions and archaeological schools of Greece. Notably, 2025 also marked the 30 years anniversary of the Nordic Library, which, apart from being a welcoming, well-functioning academic library, also represents a uniquely successful Nordic diplomatic collaboration. The anniversary was celebrated indoors, as the sky opened over our reception, with speeches by one of the founding directors, Øyvind Andersen, the Danish ambassador, Per Fabricius Andersen, who spoke on behalf of all the Nordic ambassadors, and my dear colleagues on the board, Chair Jenny Wallensteen, Petra Pakkanen, and Delia Tortaki, who gave a welcome speech, presented the anniversary exhibition, Our First Step, and toasted to the occasion. I had the pleasure of presenting the publication Boreas, edited by myself and the librarians Eddie Bjørklof and Antti Lampinen, containing many valuable contributions on the founding, the history, and the use of the library. We also held a workshop bringing librarians together from Greece and the Nordic countries for interesting discussions on the future of research libraries in a digital world. And allow me again, also this year, to stress how very much the Institute and myself value being part of this unique Nordic collaboration that allows us to count the Swedish, Finnish, and Norwegian institutes, as well as the library staff, as our close and highly regarded colleagues. And I am very grateful to all of you. 2025 marked the conclusion of Benjamin Pedersen's Carlsberg-funded postdoctoral project, Philosophizing History, the Impact of Aristotelian Thought on Hellenistic Historiography. Launched in only early 2024, the project aimed to test the hypothesis that Hellenistic historiography finds its intellectual underpinnings in Aristotelian thought. The project developed along two main lines of inquiry. The first focused on biographical writing and the peripatetics. The conclusion was the first generation of the peripatetics formalized a new understanding of biographical writing. This development cannot be understood without reference to its origin in philosophical and ethical preoccupations outside the orbit of history. The second focus was on emotions in Hellenistic historiography. The conclusion was the peripatetic understanding of emotional persuasion lay at the very heart of historical analysis in the Hellenistic period, both as cause of events and in presentation and reception of narratives. Together with Aske Damtop Poulsen from Lund University, Benjamin organized a 2-day conference at the Institute in November under the title of Cognition and Emotion in Ancient Historical Writing. One of several major outcomes of the project will be an anthology based on these discussions to be published by De Gruyter in 2027 in the series Trends in Classics, Cognitive Approaches and the Ancient World. As both a research and cultural institute, the Danish Institute facilitates and promotes academic and cultural work through our residencies. We have altogether 7 rooms, thanks to buildings very generously funded by the Carlsberg Foundation, as well as the A.P. Møller Foundation, together with the Velux Foundation and New Carlsberg Foundation. And in 2025, generous grants from the New Carlsberg Foundation supporting researchers and artists, and from the GEC Gels Foundation supporting high school teachers, allowed us to offer residencies to altogether about 106 residents, including 22 researchers, 20 university students, 8 high school teachers, and a very diverse group of artists, composers, authors, and more. We benefit from a very high number of applicants, and we are grateful for the interest as well as the generosity of the foundations that allow us to continue to house and facilitate so many dedicated researchers and artists each year. And each year we have the pleasure of receiving and facilitating numerous classes from the Danish language and science gymnasia and high schools. And in 2025, we assisted 19 classes with their excursions to many cultural and archaeological sites in Athens and Greece, and we hosted 25 classes that came to visit the Institute. The presentations at DIA include an introduction to the work and research carried out at the Institute, followed by a presentation of Greece and Greek society by the Embassy of Denmark in Athens that also helped organize the school visits to the Institute. We also organize a variation of courses, and in 2025, in February, we organized a course for teachers from Danish high schools in the classical fields, together with high school teacher Katrine Heide Pedersen, generously supported by the GEC Gels Foundation. And in July, we housed a course in ancient Greek for Danish university students, organized by classical philologist Christian Gorm Thorsen and Rasmus Gottschalk, and generously supported by the Augustinus Foundation. In early 2025, we continued our lecture series on ancient incarceration. It was organized in collaboration with the prison project Materiality of Incarceration in Mediterranean Antiquity, which is housed at the University of Copenhagen and funded by the Carlsberg Foundation, and also in collaboration with the American School of Classical Studies. And I would like to thank Matthew Larsen and Evan Levine, as well as the American School, for their help and support that allowed us to present a very interesting topic to a new and broad audience. In March, we had the privilege of presenting another theme, the Moving Monuments lecture series, focusing on the material, historical, and political nature of public monuments in Denmark and beyond. The series was organized in collaboration with the Moving Monuments Research Group at the University of Copenhagen, a project funded by the Novo Nordisk Foundation. And I would like to thank Amalie Skovmøller and Mathias Danbolt for their kind help and support and organizing this series with us that allowed us to present new and interesting angles to a very relevant topic. We also had our scholar-in-residence Magnus Brandt Nielsen present his philosophical research, and we held a book presentation for Modia 25 from Homer to Hatsi Yavrudi, which included a live narration by storyteller Georgia Hekali. Our lectures, by the way, are recorded and made available on our YouTube channel, the Danish Institute at Athens. And during 2025, we also housed the Paleolithic seminars organized by the University of Crete and the effort of paleoanthropology and speleology, and housed and then co-organized lectures in collaborations with Athens Colloquium in Ancient Philosophy. The cultural events included 3 artist talks, one also with a performance by our artist in residence Nana Franziska Schottlander, Maria Lund, and Inger Sif Heschen. And some of you may remember last year, we also presented an artistic performance by Kari Store, doing excerpts of a slit show developed while in residence at DIA. The musical performances included a concert by Y Ensemble and the Atlas' vocal ensemble, which again, some of you may remember from our annual meeting 2 years ago. And again this year, we were happy to support the Danish group Smag på dig selv, participating in Athens Jazz Festival. We also screened a Danish movie, A Perfectly Normal Family, in collaboration with the Embassy of Denmark, and we supported Danish contributions to Piraeus Port Film Festival. And thus conclude the more cultural part of the presentation. So now we dive into the archaeological reports of 2025, and this year we will be presenting 3 different projects. And first, we go to Kalydon. In 2025, the collaborative project Reinvestigating Kalydon's Laphrion Hill completed the final year of its 5-year archaeological investigation of the sanctuary of Artemis Laphria at Kalydon. The project is carried out in collaboration with the effort of Antiquities of Aetolo Acarnania and Lefkada, and directed by Dr. Olympia Vicato, Director General of Antiquities and Cultural Heritage at the Ministry of Culture, and Dr. Søren Handberg, Associate Professor of Classical Archaeology at the University of Oslo. The project revisits the investigations of the 1920s and 30s, led by Frederik Poulsen and Konstantinos Romeos, drawing on both legacy data and new excavations to provide an updated account of the sanctuary and its development. In 2025, the investigations focused on the central part of the sanctuary, on the southwestern spur of the Laphrion Hill, where excavations were carried out in 3 areas. 1, on terraces on the southern slope of the hill. 2, in the area in front of Temple B. And 3, east of and in front of Temple A. On the terraces, the objectives were twofold. First, to search for traces of votive deposits containing stacked terracotta figurines, which, according to early excavation diaries, had previously been found there in the 1920s. And second, to clean the area in preparation for detailed digital survey and documentation. The terracotta figurines remain unpublished, and the precise location of the votive deposits has not been recorded in any publications. Unfortunately, the investigations conducted in 2025 did not yet yield any evidence that would allow for a more precise identification of their location, and it is possible that they were found further down the slope of the hill. Excavations were carried out in 4 small trenches in the area in front of Temple A. Here, the aim was to better understand the contextual and stratigraphic relationship of the different contexts that had been observed during previous field campaigns, and especially the relationship between context of the prehistoric and of later historical periods. A disturbed context with fragments of lamps from the Roman period was recognized in the area immediately in front of the foundations of Temple A that indicate excavations along the foundations of the monument in Roman times. Further east of the temple foundations, a clear stratigraphy was identified, consisting of a yellowish layer covering most of the area in front of the temple, underlain by 1, possibly 2, gray layers. A semi-complete prehistoric cooking pot was recovered from the upper yellowish layer. This vessel type, characterized by 4 knobs on the shoulder, is most commonly associated with the transition between early Helladic 3 and middle Helladic 1. Its presence within the yellow layer provides good evidence for assigning this date to the formation of this deposit. Other finds from the layer, although limited, likewise point to a date within the early Helladic 3, middle Helladic 1 transition, or possibly slightly later. The investigations in this area further demonstrates that wall G1 is situated on top of the gray layer, while the upper yellowish layer must originally, at least in part, have covered it. At least 2 distinct phases can therefore be recognized. It further appears that all wall sections to the east of Temple A should be dated to the Bronze Age. Several excavation trenches were opened east of Temple B. Here, several secondary deposited contexts with a range of archaic votive material were identified. Some of these contexts are clearly soil dumps from the old excavations. Other, on the other hand, appear to be the result of other disturbances, including erosions. The votive material predominantly dates to the late Archaic period and include pottery, a few figurines, a small faience oinogou, and various metal finds, including a bronze fibula, probable oboloi, knives, and a few other bronze vessels. In one place, in trench D1, a smaller intact part of the original votive deposit was found. Along with the investigations from previous year, the presumed intact area of the archaic votive deposit now covers an area of more than 200 square meters. On the final day, on the 25 campaign, a dressed stone block was discovered in trench Zeta 8-3 that might be part of a balbis, a starting block for a stadium. Its incised groove along the northern edge and central square dowel hole correspond closely to features documented elsewhere. A particular compelling parallel is provided by the balbis at the sanctuary at Moligrion near Nafpaktos, whose form and placement adjacent to the temple closely mirror the possible topographical layout in Kalydon. Finally, in 2025, the project also systematically investigated architectural blocks from a heap of stones left by the 1920s and 30s excavation. All elements were documented, including the production of digital 3D models, in order to identify pieces omitted from previous publications and to verify published measurements. In total, 63 blocks were scanned with handheld 3D scanners, and within the heap, 136 fragments of Porolitos column flutes were identified, 19 of which were preserved to the full width of the flute. This, along with detailed surveys in previous years, provide valuable evidence to reassess the old architectural reconstructions. This summer, the project hopes to continue its explorations of the Laphrion Hill and expresses its gratitude to the Hellenic Ministry of Culture and Sports for granting the permission and to the Augustinus Foundation for generous financial support. The project also extends its gratitude to all the collaborating institutions and individuals for their invaluable contributions to the research project. And before we move on, allow me to mention that this year we can celebrate 100 years since the Danes first excavated in Kalydon. The first excavations in 1926 were directed by Frederik Poulsen, the then director of the New Carlsberg Glyptotek in Copenhagen, in cooperation with the Danish architect Einar Dybwe and the Greek archaeologist Konstantinos Romeos. And the anniversary is marked by an exhibition at the Nordic Library that already is open, so please do give it a visit these coming days. And now we move on to a little bit younger Danish project, but still in the neighborhood of Kalydon at Pangali. The late final Neolithic site of Pangali, located on the slopes of Mount Varasova in Etolia, was first identified in 1995. In 2025, Project Pangali marked the beginning of a new 5-year research program focused on the systematic re-examination of the site. The project is a collaboration between the effort of Antiquities of Etolo-Acarnania and Lefkada and the Danish Institute of Athens, and is directed by effort director Dr. Fortine Saranti, Dr. Lasse William Størrensen of the National Museum of Denmark, and Professor Søren of the Torts Institute at the University of Copenhagen. Previously, the site had been investigated through a single 2 by 2 meters trial trench. The results, published in Kalkis Aetolias 1, established Pangali as a well-preserved habitation site from the late final Neolithic transition. 30 years on, Pangali remains a key context for examining how communities adapted to environmental instability, shifting subsistence strategies, and increasing mobility during the late 5th millennium BC. A period that marks a shift away from open-air settlements towards more marginal and protected locations, often accompanied by a reduction in visible activity and possible decline in population. The 2025 campaign was, therefore, designed to reassess the site through systematic, non-invasive methods combined with high-resolution spatial documentation. The surface survey demonstrated dense distributions of pottery, chipped stone, and ground stone objects across the terraces. These results show that substantial and well-preserved deposits remain in situ, making Pangali highly suitable for targeted excavation and further analysis. The combined evidence from the earlier excavations and the 2025 surface survey points towards a community characterized by diversified subsistence strategies. The lithic assemblage includes numerous tanked points, with 2 additional examples found during the 2025 survey. Together with the faunal assemblage from 1996, in which approximately 20% of the identified species are wild, this suggests that hunting formed an important component of the subsistence economy alongside farming and herding. The presence of obsidian points indicates that these practices were embedded within wider systems of material procurement and exchange. This broader framework is further reflected in the assemblage, which provides clear evidence for interregional connectivity. The presence of Melian obsidian and so-called Balkan flint indicates participation in exchange networks linked the Aegean with the Balkan hinterlands. Particularly intriguing is the presence of a small flake tentatively interpreted as amber found during the 2025 survey. Amber has not previously been documented in Neolithic contexts in Greece. However, its exploitation is well attested in Western Sicily during the 5th millennium BC, where it formed part of exchange system extending across the central Mediterranean. Given Pangali's location in Western Greece, a Sicilian origin is both geographically and chronologically plausible. If confirmed, this would indicate connections between the central and eastern Mediterranean at a significantly earlier date than currently documented, transforming Pangali from a peripheral Aegean site into one situated at the intersection of multiple exchange spheres. Future work will focus on 5 interrelated objectives: establishing the stratigraphy and the extent of the site, refining its chronology, reconstructing subsistence strategies through environmental analysis, examining technological and domestic practices, and further investigating exchange networks through provenance studies. In this way, Pangali will be well positioned to contribute to current discussions of small-scale habitation, adaptive strategies, and interregional interaction during the late final Neolithic, and offers a rare opportunity to investigate when, how, and why these broader transformations occurred, and to evaluate competing explanations, including climate change, socio-economic reorganization, and possible population decline. Finally, the project wishes to express its sincere gratitude to the Greek Ministry of Culture, the effort of Antiquities of Etoloa, Kanania, and Lefkada, and the Danish Institute for their continued support. And so now we're moving on to the third and last but not least project from the Campus Valley on Cirrus. In 2025, the Jade Odyssey project continued its geoarchaeological survey in northern Cirrus, focusing on the Neolithic exploitation of jadeite in the Campus Valley. Bringing together a multidisciplinary team of archaeologists and geologists, it is directed by Dr. Laphrion Sørensen from the National Museum of Denmark, Professor Søren from the Tors Institute at the University of Copenhagen, and Dr. Theodora Papaangelopoulou from the effort Antiquities of Cyclades, in collaboration with the Danish Institute at Athens. Financial support has been generously provided by the Consul General Gösta Enbom's Foundation, the Danish Ministry of Culture's Research Committee, and the ERC project From Stone to Home, Polished Stone Tools Biography and their social and economic impact in the Aegean Neolithic, to all of whom the team is very grateful. Combining archaeological survey, geological analysis, and digital landscape recording, the project identifies quarry sites, documents production areas, and reconstructs how prehistoric groups organized maritime expeditions to extract and work jadeite. In doing so, it aims not only to understand how these objects were produced, but also how they circulated across the region and became embedded in a wider system of exchange, interaction, and meaning. The 2025 field campaign significantly expanded the investigation of the Campus Valley, extending from Lia Beach up to the village of Campus. Here, more than 145 boulders of geoarchaeological interest have now been documented, and the number of identified activity areas continue to increase. Most recently, an obsidian-rich area, designated Site 3B, has been identified where dense concentrations of worked obsidian point to specialized activities beyond quarrying itself. Taken together, these results reveal a far more extensive and spatially complex exploitation landscape than previously recognized, in which extraction, production, and short-term occupation were closely interconnected. At Site 1, a major workshop area, work has focused on refining both the scale and organization of production. Here, more than 16,000 worked pieces of jadeite were already collected during the 2022 campaign. Since then, wind erosion has exposed deeper archaeological strata, revealing thousands of additional fragments and confirming that the deposit extends below the surface. Systematic collection has now increased the assemblage to more than 20,800 work pieces within the workshop alone. Taken together, the location of the site and the density of material strongly indicate that Site 1 functioned as a central and repeatedly used production area rather than a short-term and opportunistic extraction site. Among the worked pieces from the workshop, we have identified a number of small, irregularly shaped pieces that likely represent preforms for beads or miniature axes, indicating a more diversified production than previously recognized. In addition, the assemblage includes a substantial number of marine shells, primarily Patella caerulea, many of which are well preserved and are currently undergoing AMS dating. These shells will provide important chronological indicators for different phases of activity at the site. Together, these findings suggest that the production sequence at Site 1 was complex, combining large-scale tool manufacture with the creation of more refined, possibly symbolic objects such as beads and miniatures. Using total station survey, drone bast mapping, and GIS analysis, the team has recorded over 5,000 pieces of napped jadeite beyond the main workshop. These data reveal clear spatial patterns, including the downslope dispersal caused by erosion originating from the workshop. This integrated approach allows us to reconstruct production zones at the scale of the entire landscape and to distinguish between primary working areas and secondary depositional zones. Another discovery in 2025 is a circular jadeite stone-lined pit located near Site 3. The feature consists of upright stones forming a roughly 1 meter wide circle. Comparisons with similar features from sites in Western Anatolia suggest that it may tentatively date to the early Neolithic, where such structures are sometimes associated with the deposition of polished stone tools. Beyond Cirrus, the project is beginning to illuminate the wider regional significance of jadeite production in the Campus Valley. Comparative analysis of polished stone assemblages from sites such as Sesklo and Dimini show that around 10% can be identified as jadeite originating from Cirrus. The results are supported by a combination of analytical methods, including Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, portable XRF, and density analysis, in addition to distinctive macroscopic and petrographic characteristics. This demonstrates that Cirrus was not a peripheral resource area, but a major center of production integrated into long-distance exchange networks across the Aegean, reaching as far as Egypt. Finally, the project would like to express their sincere thanks to the Greek Ministry of Culture, the effort of Antiquities of Cyclades, and the Danish Institute for their continued support of the project. Moving on to the last part of the presentations, the publications of 2025. First, we have the proceedings of the Danish Institute at Athens, or Pade 11. The volume includes field reports from Danish Greek projects in Kalydon and Cirrus, as well as Cyprus. It also includes 6 contributions on ancient studies, such as the sculptures from the Huron at Kalydon, and the Bronze Age Divine Sun Horse found in Denmark, with links to early Iron Age Italy and Greece, and more. The volume was edited by Benjamin Pedersen and generously supported by Consul George York and wife Emma York's foundation, the Augustinus Foundation, and an anonymous foundation supporting the Institute, and we are grateful to all of them. Next, we have the monographs of the Danish Institute at Athens, or MODIA 25, the Artemis Laphrion Sanctuary at Kalydon in Anatolia, the pottery and terracotta lamps by Dr. Sanne Barfod. In 2016, Dr. Sanne Barfod launched the research project Rediscovering Artemis, where she studied pottery and other small finds discovered during the excavations of the Artemis Laphrion Sanctuary in Kalydon in the 20s and 30s. The excavations were, as previously mentioned, directed by Frederik Poulsen from the New Carlsberg Glyptotek in cooperation with architect Einar Dykve and the archaeologist Konstantinos Romeas. The pottery and votives found during the sanctuary excavations were left out of the 1948 publication of the Architecture and Topography, and Barfod has been analyzing and preparing this large find assemblage for publication. This represents the first impressive volume focusing on the pottery and the terracotta lamps, which adds significant knowledge to the study of archaeology in the region of Aetolia, ancient Greek religion, as well as ceramic production and consumption. It presents notable Mycenaean material alongside distinctive locally produced wares and imported pottery from Corinth, Attica, and Elis, thus highlighting Kalydon's long-standing interregional connectivity. The publication was generously financed by the Carlsberg Foundation, that also funded the research project, as well as the Augustinus Foundation. Next step in the Rediscovering Artemis project is to publish the terracotta objects and small finds, which we also look very much forward to, but congratulations on this volume. See you. Monographs of the Danish Institute at Athens, volume 27, is a publication of an underwater archaeology and cultural resources lecture series held at the Danish Institute in 2023 to 24, carried out as double lectures between Danish and Greek scholars. The lectures, and now this publication, cast a light on the two countries who are both on the forefront of exploring, preserving, and communicating underwater cultural heritage, and create a dialogue between experts from both areas, while also sharing the topic with a broad audience. For the lectures, I was fortunate enough to have help from my co-organizers, Dimitris Kokomelis, Afro of the Underwater Antiquities, Panos Athanasopoulos, also from the Danish Institute, and Athena Tragadas from the University of Copenhagen and the Viking Ship Museum, with Athanasopoulos and Tragadas also being co-editors of the publication, of which the cover was created by one of the participating lecturers, Alex Turtas, and I am most grateful to all of them for their invaluable efforts in creating both lecture series and publication. The volume is generously funded by the Augustinus Foundation. And now, for the last part of my presentation, I must first ask Dr. Søren, Professor Søren Dietz, to join me up here, please. Yes, that is you. Will you join me? And following right behind him, I must also ask the former director of the Danish National Museum, Per Christian Madsen from the Enborn Foundation, and John Lund as representatives of the editors to join me as presenters. Søren, come stand here. There. You, and then look at the order. Oh. So, as I will continue speaking a little bit while you enjoy the book. As most of you will be aware, Professor Søren Dietz played a pivotal role in the establishment of the Danish Institute at Athens nearly 40 years ago and served as its first director. Without his commitment to this cause, things might have turned out very different. But Søren is first and foremost a pioneering archaeologist who is renowned for his archaeological fieldwork in Greece and Tunisia, and also for his numerous scholarly publications, which cover an impressive range of topics and cultures. Dear Søren, in recognition of your lifetime achievement, 23 of your colleagues and friends came together to contribute to a volume entitled Mediterranean Horizons, Archaeological Studies in Honor of Søren Dietz, which explores themes close to your heart. From the ancient past of the Aegean to the Bronze Age networks linking Scandinavia to the Mediterranean, and the rich tapestry of life in ancient Greece and Tunisia. The volume was edited by 4 of your close collaborators and friends, Pernille Baksgaard from the University of Copenhagen, together with John Lund, Peter Pence, and Lasse William Sørensen, all from the National Museum of Denmark. It is published by Sidestone Press as part of the Danish Institute Miscellaneous series. As the current director of the Danish Institute, I am delighted to first and foremost thank the Consul General Gösta Enbom's Foundation for its generous financial support, and I also extend my sincere thanks to all individuals who contributed to making this publication possible. And you have already presented the physical volume to Søren, so I just will end by saying congratulations, Søren.
Thank you very much.
Så må du
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Είναι μεγάλη έκπληξη, δεν του ήξερα αυτό. Dear friends and colleagues, thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to have this nice book. I was not aware that I was going to get such a thing. So this is really a surprise. And it's very nice to be surprised in this way, to be honored like that. Beautiful book. I'm looking very much forward to read, see all my good friends. In Sweden, they have, when they make this kind of books, they call it a vennebok. So I can see that many of my good old friends are represented here and have contributed to this nice publication. So thank you very much indeed.
Now, I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's speaker. Our other Søren from Kalydon, Søren Handberg, is Associate Professor of Classical Archaeology in the Department of Archaeology, Conservation and History at the University of Oslo, where he's also a member of the Pedagogical Academy for Distinguished Educators. He holds a PhD in Classical Archaeology from the Danish National Research Foundation Center of Excellence, the Center for Black Sea Studies at Aarhus University, with a thesis on locally produced pottery in the Greek colonies in the Black Sea region. Before his appointment at the University of Oslo, he was the assistant director of the Danish Institute at Athens from 2012 to 2015, and he has been involved in archaeological fieldwork at Kalydon since 2011, serving as co-director from 2015 in collaboration with Dr. Olympia Vicato and the effort of Itolo Akanania and Lefkada. And this evening we will be enlightened and entertained by the lecture Reinvestigating Kalydon's Laphrion Hill. Please welcome Søren.
Thank you very much, Sanne, and good evening, everyone. It's a bit overwhelming to see so many people in the crowd. Thank you all for coming. So today it's exactly 100 years, 1 month, and 2 weeks since Frederik Poulsen and Konstantinos Ormaios started a systematic archaeological work at Kalydon. And I feel really honored, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to stand here and talk about the same area, the same monuments as they did 100 years ago. And luckily we have legacy data. We have Poulsen's memoirs, we have his excavation diaries, we have personal letters. I will talk a little bit more about them. So we kind of, through those excavations and that field project, we get an idea of how life was like back then and how it was to carry out archaeological excavations and projects, and also how life was like in the local villages close to Kalydon. So there's much to be explored, and we are exploring some of it in this exhibition, this photographic exhibition that Sanne mentioned at the Nordic Library, so I really encourage you to go and see that. Yes. Over the past 5 years, the collaborative project Reinvestigating Kalydon's Laphrion Hill has conducted extensive archaeological research in the area of Artemis Laphria at Kalydon. This sanctuary was first systematically explored in the 1920s and 30s under the direction of the Danish archaeologist Frederik Poulsen and the Greek archaeologist Konstantinos Ormaios. The plan to the right shows all the areas investigated within the sanctuary during the 21 to 25 program. Not all, I have to say, because there are also some in the Heron that I'm not showing here, because I'm focusing on the sanctuary. Over the years, we've been rereading the published reports and books and looked into the unpublished legacy material such as Poulsen's excavation diaries and old photographs and personal correspondence letters preserved at the New Carlsberg Glyptotek in Copenhagen. And we increasingly came to question several long-standing interpretations, and at the same time it became clear to us that a substantial part of the sanctuary remained unexplored, unexcavated. Our current fieldwork has been guided by a series of specific research questions that collectively aim to reconstruct a new history of the sanctuary's development and to reassess its local and regional significance. The work with interpreting the data will continue for the coming years, or hopefully not decades, but for a long time anyway. One of the central aims of the project has been to achieve a better understanding of the sanctuary's earliest phases and to investigate the issue of cult continuity from the Mycenaean period onwards. Given the wealth of new information produced by our recent work, I will concentrate on this particular aspect in tonight's presentation. The early excavators placed the earliest architectural phase of the sanctuary on the southern spur of the Laphrion hill. Here, the Danish architect Einar Bygve reconstructed two temples of the later 7th century BC, Temple B1, known only from 16 architectural terracotta elements, and Building H, to which a number of additional architectural elements were attributed. And so all these elements architectural elements were found, basically all of them in this area here. The next substantial phase of development, according to Bygve, the architect, took place in the 6th century BC with the construction of a new version of Temple B and the erection of two additional buildings, the so-called Temple A and the Building E. In tonight's presentation, I will propose a different development, one in which neither Building E nor Building H existed in the Archaic period. But to do so, we must first go back in time to the Bronze Age. During cleaning in 22 and excavations in 23, contexts containing early and middle Helladic pottery and lithic material were identified. And this was a big surprise to us when we suddenly were faced with all this Bronze Age material. The upper layer consisted of a compact yellowish deposit, while the lower was a darker grayish layer. It became clear that Building H had at least two construction phases, both most likely sealed by the yellowish layer. In order to investigate these early deposits and to clarify the stratigraphy, we opened a series of smaller trenches in front of Temple A in 25, as Sanne just talked about. Here, a stratified sequence consisting of three principal depositional units was identified. A dark gray layer rests directly on bedrock, and above this, an intermediate lighter gray deposit, and finally, this uppermost context of yellowish compact layer that reached as far as Building H. And we saw this before, and all the finds from this yellowish layer, although not numerous finds, few fragments, can be dated to the Bronze Age, and this was the best preserved of all the ceramic vessels. The semi-complete wide mouth cooking pot with 4 knobs on the shoulder. Now, several of these stone foundations are stratigraphically associated with the 3 identified layers, which allows us to propose a sequence of 3 architectural phases dating between the early Helladic III and the beginning of the Middle Helladic period. More detailed studies of the ceramic assemblages may refine the chronology of these 3 layers. And even though this work is still in progress, it's already highly probable that Building H should be dated to the Bronze Age, and that a 7th century date for this building can be rejected. And this in turn has significant implications for disentangling Bygve's proposed architectural elements from this structure. In 24, a layer of broken storage vessels was revealed beneath the yellow layer, in the scarp marking the transition from the upper to the lower plateau. These larger vessels almost certainly form part of the inventory of a storage room belonging to an early early to middle Helladic house, as is also attested at Helike in northern Peloponnese. Consequently, the gray and yellow layers may be interpreted as destruction deposits, with the yellowish layer possibly representing the collapsed mud brick walls. What happened after this early to middle Helladic phase remains uncertain. However, the spatial relationship between buildings H and D suggests that building D was constructed after building H. The early excavators had already proposed such a sequence, but because they assigned a 7th century date to building H, they dated building D to the 6th century, as mentioned earlier. Subsequent scholarship has generally favored an 8th century BC date for building D, which remains a possibility. The earlier publications do not make it clear whether the interior of building D had been fully excavated in the 20s and 30s. Basically, all we have from that is a photograph where it looks like it hasn't been excavated. And therefore, in 24, we undertook excavations within this apsidal building in order to gain a better understanding of its chronology. Unfortunately, we did not identify any intact features, such as a floor, that could be associated with the building's period of use. Instead, the interior appears to have been filled in with a leveling fill, and pottery from this fill ranges in date from the Middle Helladic to the Hellenistic period. Just a few examples there. Building D may also be compared to the apsidal building excavated more than 20 years ago at the site of Chania Gavrolimnis on the opposite side of Mount Varasva, approximately 10 kilometers east of Kalydon. The Gavrolimnis building is dated to the late Middle Helladic period, with a subsequent early Mycenaean structure constructed above it. Apart from sporadic Middle Helladic pottery at Kalydon, building D may represent the only recognizable architecture that remains from this phase, but still the date is unfortunately unclear. The Mycenaean period at Kalydon that we were particularly interested in investigating, or finding even, has posed a particular persistent problem in the study of the site. And to appreciate the issue fully, we must return to a Danish newspaper published 100 years ago. On the 12th of February 1926, less than a month before the first Greek-Danish field campaign at Kalydon began, the Danish newspaper, the Social Democrat, published an interview with Frederik Poulsen about the forthcoming excavations in Greece. When asked by the journalist how the project came about, Poulsen replied, and I quote from the original Danish, "My Greek friend, the renowned archaeologist Romeus, and I have long had our eyes at the site. Some trial excavations at the temple whetted our appetite. Among other things, we found sherds of vases and jars dating all the way back to the Mycenaean period. That Poulsen should mention Mycenaean pottery is very surprising indeed, since the early excavators never refer to any Mycenaean finds in their publications, nor are such finds mentioned in Poulsen's excavation diaries. There's simply no mention of it. So when we first found this newspaper clip, we were very intrigued. We can deduce that the Mycenaean pottery Poulsen refers to must have come from Romeus' trial excavations conducted in November of the previous year, so in 1925. In his brief account of these trial excavations, very brief, Romeus likewise makes no mention of Mycenaean pottery. He states only that he excavated in the area around the classical Temple B and in the Hellenistic Heron. And as I mentioned, these discrepancies further fueled our curiosity and desire to undertake investigations on the Laphrion Hill when we first began planning this new program, which is actually more than a decade ago now. And legacy data always played a very important role in this project. And a central component of this work was to study and publish the finds from the old excavations that remained unpublished. And when Sanne first began working on the pottery, which we just heard in the director's report, was fully published last year. She immediately identified a substantial group of Mycenaean vessels among the material retained from the old excavations housed in the National Archaeological Museum here in Athens. The Mycenaean assemblage, you just see two characteristic examples here. It amounts to a minimum of 105 vessels, individual vessels, representing more than 9% of the total amount of pottery preserved from the old excavations. Our recent excavations on the Laphrion Hill have produced only a handful of Mycenaean sherds, and we have not fully been able to identify any context dating to this period. And this question of where exactly the larger Mycenaean assemblage from the old excavations was found, therefore remains unresolved. All we can say is that, with some confidence, is that it most likely came from the area around Temple B or the Heron, if we believe this association with the interview with Poulsen and Ormeus' report. The next occupational phase in the sanctuary that we can clearly identify dates to the geometric period. At this time, we have the stone kist installation that the architect Dygve rather unassumingly labeled G4, G for grave. He believed it was a child's grave. In the photograph on the right, you may notice a precariously built curved wall, which is represented as straighter in Dygve's plan on the left. His rendering perhaps reflects the fact that he did not accept Ormeus' interpretation of the structure as part of an apsidal house. In Poulsen's diary entries of the 5th and 8th of July, 1926, June, not July, he discusses the circumstances of the excavations at G4 and notes that geometric pottery was found both by the curved wall and within the G4 installation itself. He also records presence of kümmerlige, so poor prehistoric sherds from the lower levels inside the installation. And this really matches what we found, these few pieces of pottery in this yellowish layer, which is this one here and this one. On the basis of the available evidence, this is the only location where the early excavators reported prehistoric pottery. It is therefore likely that the pre-Mycenaean sherds that were retained from the old excavations shown here on the left are the same poor pieces described by Poulsen. Apart from the area around installation G4 and the curved wall, geometric pottery was only reported from one other location, the southeastern corner of the sanctuary inside the later classical Temenos wall. The publication also records that a geometric bronze horse was found by the curved wall, and from Poulsen's diaries, we learned that a bronze rooster and two sphinxes, presumably also of bronze and dating to the geometric period, were discovered at the southeastern corner of the sanctuary. And these bronzes may very well be the bronze figurines now on display at the National Archaeological Museum here in Athens. Again, thanks to Sanne Barfod's study of the pottery from the early excavations, we now have a good understanding of the assemblage of geometric pottery. We may note in particular the predominance of vessels associated with the consumption of wine, as well as the presence of imports from Corinth and Achaia, along with locally produced wares. If we compare the find spots of geometric pottery from the old excavations with the spatial distribution of geometric pottery from our recent work, we see a clear correspondence, although I have to say that we haven't fully processed all this pottery we found there. But this paints a sufficiently clear picture, I think. Not only does the limited range of shapes, essentially cups and craters, closely match the assemblages from the old excavations, but the highest concentration is likewise on the slope and lower plateau directly below the upper plateau with the G4 installation. Geometric pottery has not been found anywhere else on the entire Laphrion Hill, only in this area. Archaeological exploration elsewhere in Kalydon over the past 2.5 decades has steadily increased the number of contexts securely dated to the geometric period. We now have evidence from the Acropolis, the lower town, and a grave to the northeast of the city. And this begins to paint a picture of a more extensive geometric community. The evidence from the lower town is particularly interesting. In 2004, during excavations directed by Søren and Maria Staropologazzi, a single stray geometric sherd was discovered. A close study of this shows that it most likely belongs to a larger crater dating to the middle to late geometric period, and in fact it's very similar in form, decoration, and clay to two impressive craters found over 20 years ago in rescue excavations in Patras across the Gulf from Kalydon. This single, Anastasia Gadulo has recently associated the two craters from Patras with the emergence of a local social elite for whom wine and communal meals were defining markers of their elevated status. And this single fragment, together with the evidence for wine consumption in the sanctuary, may likewise offer a first glimpse of an emerging elite in Kalydon around the middle of the 8th century BC. Now, the recent excavations at the Apollo sanctuary at Thermon provide parallel to what we see in Kalydon. There, Ioannis Papapostoulou identified a series of pits dug into a yellow layer after the destruction of the late Helladic Megaron B. And he believes this happened in the geometric period, especially because some of these pits contained geometric pottery. And they were seem to be dug into the yellow layer. Papapostoulou related the function of these pits to a small bronze figurine from the geometric period, which depicts a person holding a cup, and suggested that the pits could have been used for libation rituals. This is probably also how we should understand installation G4 at Kalydon. In fact, in that case, the curved wall may be interpreted as a peripolos that surrounded a central pit used for ritual activity. Now, returning to this question of building E, which the early excavators dated to the 6th century BC, given that the two walls assigned to building E by Dugve are situated below the upper plateau, they're sort of on the slope, and there's no trace of these walls above the Bronze Age layers, it seems unlikely to me that these walls, together with wall M to the south, should belong to the Archaic period. The early excavators refer to a terrace on the upper plateau, and what appears to be a wall can perhaps be discerned in old photographs. I consider two alternative interpretations more plausible. Either these walls should be dated to the Bronze Age, or they may have functioned as buttresses for a retaining wall along the edge of the upper plateau. In the later case, the people carrying out the libation rituals in the 8th century BC may have leveled the yellow layer, this destruction layer from the Bronze Age, in this area and constructed a low terrace wall along the edge of the upper plateau, thereby creating a platform on which the G4 pit and the peripolos walls were built, an arrangement that finds somewhat close parallels in other sites. Now, ash was also recorded from this installation G4 during the old excavations, but we don't have any contextual evidence for animal sacrifices from this period in Kalydon, from the geometric period. In the present state of our knowledge, animal sacrifices in the sanctuary appear to have begun around the same time as the construction of the first temple, B1, possibly around 620 BC. In the angle formed by two retaining walls in the southeastern corner of the sanctuary, precisely where the geometric pottery was found, the early excavators left a small ash deposit, deposit J, unexcavated. They're very clear about that in the publication. We found it, we left it, didn't do anything. And one of our aims was then we hoped that it would be preserved and to find it and investigate it further. And luckily it was exactly preserved like it was 100 years ago, the ash in the landscape. That was quite remarkable, I think. In 23, we opened two small test trenches in order to investigate the stratigraphy of this deposit, just very small test trenches. Both trenches were excavated down to bedrock, which was reached at a depth of about 30 centimeters below the top of the deposit. The excavations revealed two distinct layers, both containing charcoal, hundreds of burned animal bones, and ceramic fragments, indicating deliberate and repeated depositions. Preliminary analysis of the pottery provides important chronological indicators. Sherds from the lower layer date to the later 7th to the early 6th century BC. And the upper gray layer includes Corinthian conventionalizing Kotelysgoi and appears to have been to be slightly later in date, so 6th century into the early 5th century BC. And so archaeologist Angelos Hatchikoumis, who studied the faunal remains, has identified the bones of at least 52 individual animals, predominantly sheep and goats, with smaller numbers of cattle and pigs in both layers. Although modest in quantities, this material offers first substantial insights into the ritual practices of the early cult at the site. And it was really densely packed with calcinated bones. Hatchikoumis' study further revealed that all of the postcranial remains that had been burned, and all the postcranial remains had been burned, and that the overwhelming majority of the bones derived from the thigh and the tail, precisely the elements of Thesia offerings. So we can compare this ash deposit to another deposit that we discovered in 22, just north of the Hellenistic store. In this deposit, ceramic vessels, most notably drinking cups, together with abundant marine shells and some animal bones, were deposited in the early 5th century BC. Among the finds were an almost intact iron lance of a type known, for instance, from Olympia. Interestingly, the faunal remains from this context exhibit a markedly different pattern of discard from the ash layer. Only a small number of the bones show traces of burning, and they are not calcinated. In addition, cut marks are visible on some, and cattle and pig are comparatively more frequent. Taken together, these features strongly suggest that the deposit should be associated primarily with the ritual meals rather than with animal sacrifices. Given that this deposit is located more than 150 meters to the north of the ash deposit, we tentatively consider it as an indicator of the northern extent of the sanctuary in this period, although it can be secondary deposit. We haven't really figured it out or decided on it yet. But through further cleaning and small-scale excavations, we were able to identify archaeological context containing burned animal bones and archaic pottery at several points below the later terrace walls along the eastern border of the sanctuary, as the director also just mentioned. At this stage, we might hypothesize that the refuse from animal sacrifices and other associated votives on the upper plateau was regularly discarded onto the lower plateau, a process that gradually created a substantial votive deposit. And as far as we can judge, approximately 200 square meters of this deposit appears to be preserved intact. There are also indications in Poulsen's excavation notebooks that they actually found a similar situation on this side here. But we haven't found any traces of that. It might be in the soil dumps. In addition to the burned animal bones, the deposit contains a varied assemblage of pottery, most of which, on present evidence, dates no later than the late Archaic period. Sporadic metal finds include fragments of iron knives and possibly roasting spits, oboloi, bronze rings, fibulae, fragments of one or two spearheads. And it's really striking that the deposition in this area appears to cease entirely in the late Archaic or early Classical period, so in the early 5th century, which suggests a significant change in ritual at this time. We really haven't found any later pottery that we can in any way associate with these deposits. And Pausanias relates that a new chryselephantine cult statue to the goddess was commissioned from the sculptors Menigmos and Suidas of Naupaktos, who are known to have been active in the early classical period. And the end of deposition appears to coincide chronologically with this investment in a new cult statue and possibly with the construction of a corresponding new temple. And this really suggests a major reorganization of the ritual practices in the sanctuary at this time. With this, we enter a new developmental phase of the sanctuary where the topography changes, and I will end my presentation with this. So to conclude, new archaeological investigations on the Laphrion Hill over the past 5 years have fundamentally revised our understanding, in my opinion, of the sanctuary of Artemis Laphria. The new evidence challenges long-standing interpretations and open up new questions and avenues for future research. One of the most significant discoveries concerns, of course, the Bronze Age occupational phase. The evidence strongly indicates the existence of a substantial building or buildings below the level of the sanctuary of the historical period. This new evidence recontextualizes the foundation walls that the early excavators dated to the 7th and 6th centuries BC. We may now propose a date in the prehistoric period or alternatively in the geometric period. We may also suggest that the Bronze Age house or houses on the spur of the hill represent only a small part of a larger Bronze Age settlement, possibly situated below and on the slopes of the hill that still awaits discovery. And when we excavated from 2012 to 14 in the theater, we actually did find some Bronze Age pieces all the way down from the hill. Equally important is the recontextualization of pottery and archaeological context relating to ritual practices of the 8th century and early 7th centuries, this geometric pottery. In this period, the pottery assemblage is dominated by cups and craters pointing to communal drinking and possibly communal meals as key elements in the early cult, likely associated with an emerging elite. It is worth noting that the assemblage includes imports from various places along the northern Peloponnesian coast, which inscribes Kalydon within a wider network already in this period, and also suggests that a significant number of people participated in the rituals. Although the evidence for a constructed platform remains inconclusive or tentative, as at best it needs more excavation, it would certainly fit, such a constructed platform would certainly fit the practical needs of a larger group that assembled up on the upper plateau. Finally, the excavations and cleaning along the eastern border of the sanctuary have identified a substantial archaic ash and votive deposit. And the fact that the beginning of the accumulation of burnt animal bones coincides chronologically, so it seems, with the construction of the first identifiable temple may indicate that large-scale animal sacrifices did not become a part of the ritual before more people of the community started to engage with the rituals or participate in the ritual. It also raises questions about who constructed the first temple and for what reasons. Maybe it was erected by a smaller elite group of the community as a direct response to a growing group of worshippers. Perhaps the temple functioned as an exclusive dining venue for this select group of locals and foreign members of the elite who were accustomed to have exclusive libation rituals in this G4 installation. And maybe they used the building and its associated painted metopiece to display their elevated status. So these are some of the questions that we must try to pursue in the future. Before I end, I must thank all the employees of the effort in Misologi for all their help and all the staff members. We benefited greatly from the help of everyone and for the excellent collaboration in the field and also beyond. So I'm very grateful, and on behalf of the Danish Institute, I thank the effort for engaging in this collaboration. And thanks are also due to all the people, and unfortunately I cannot mention all of them, but all the people who've been involved in the fieldwork or in other ways helped the project. And here you see some of the students who have participated past 4 years. So we've been some really big groups, and I'm very grateful to all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Søren. That was an intriguing and impressive amount of results you presented there, of a continuously fascinating sanctuary, and I think also a testament to how much information can truly be gained by revisiting older excavations. So, let me just find a slide briefly. Just this one. Because now it is time for the musical performance of this evening. And I proudly present Anton Friisgaard and Oscar Friisgaard. They are educated from the contemporary musical conservatories of southern Denmark and Copenhagen. And despite their young ages, they have already established themselves on the Danish music scene with published albums, big concerts, and collaborative projects in various European cities. Oscar and Anton held a 2-month residency at DIA this winter, developing an original concert piece that we will hear excerpts from in a moment. They were unusually productive during their stay. Not only did they compose the first version of the musical piece, which was performed at a concert at DIA in January, they also engaged in exchange and collaborations with a number of colleagues here in Athens, people at the Conservatory for Contemporary Music in Athens, and researchers at the Institute. It was a pleasure having them, and we look forward to sharing this musical piece and experience with you. But I think first Oscar and Anton will themselves add a few words on the piece and its production. So please welcome Anton Friisgaard and Oscar Friisgaard. Skal jeg bare smække den her ned? I skal ikke... Yes. Ja. Ja, det gør jeg. Så.
Perfect. Thank you, Sanne. Very nice to be back. We had a great stay last time, so we're really excited to be in the city again. I'm Anton.
I'm Oscar.
And we have a small presentation planned.
Yeah, we'll just say a few words, I guess, about our project. We were here for a 2-month residency where we kind of dug through philosophy and representations and real-world manifestations of our big theme, evil, that we knew we wanted to make a piece about. And from that research, we kind of structured a bunch of musical works that is then transformed into this abstract musical narrative and a spatial sound, multi-speaker sound experience about evil and kind of guided by evil as well. I guess in evil, what we found interesting is that it's a place where both culture and morals kind of coalesce with our deepest fears, basically, or deepest instincts about us, deepest fears, and that's what we kind of wanted to explore through this project.
Yeah, exactly. And as Oscar mentioned, we're doing this like multi-speaker experience. So if you can see that we have, especially for today, installed 4 speakers throughout the room. So you'll hear the sound also moving around you, and that's how it's composed, the piece. It's for this, with this spatial, what's it called? The spatial element is key to the piece as well. And during our stay, we were fortunate enough to actually have a kind of double residency, and the second one being at the Athens Conservatoire. And here we got to work with one of the rarest and most iconic synthesizers, the EMS Synthi 100. It's one of the synthesizers that is like very often used by the electronic music pioneers. So kind of an archaeological piece of equipment as well. And it was brought to Athens originally by Yannis Xenakis, who some may know as like a pivotal figure in contemporary music, and also a key inspiration for why we decided to do this piece and why we decided to do it spatially as well, because he was kind of a master in this. And I always say that, you know, like, no matter how wild your idea gets, Yannis Xenakis will always have done it 10 times wilder already. So yeah, but nonetheless, yeah, we really like this spatial component, and we've tried to work with that as well. And right now for the project, we are showing this 20-minute excerpt. We have a grand plan for where we want to go with it. So right now we are planning and fundraising for the next step of the project. We're working towards a final premiere, an official premiere in Copenhagen in the start of 2027, and hopefully a subsequent European tour where the project can kind of live in different formats, site-specific formats. And in its final form, the piece is going to include some spatial design as well as lighting design. We're going to do site-specific fine-tuning when we present the piece, and we're going to incorporate a live choir and a custom speaker setup. So it's going to be even more elaborate, just to get a tiny bit closer to Yannis Xenakis. We're going to do guitar amp cabinet speakers dispersed throughout the room, and here we're going to work a little bit more with the concert space itself, like the sonics of the concert space, but also the temporal and cultural properties of different types of speakers. And we're going to activate that inside the piece. So we're really excited also to go into this next phase, and we hope you like it where it is now as well. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy the piece, and we're going to dim the lights. We're actually going to turn the lights off as much as we can, and I think we have some technicians helping us with that.
Yeah.
So once we're ready, yeah. Super. Thank you. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
be virtuous. And you do not feel that everything would perish in an instant if there were nothing but virtues on earth. Vice must exist. It is as unjust of you to punish it as it would be to poke fun at a blind man. Enjoy yourself, my friend. Enjoy yourself. Leave to nature the care of moving you as she pleases, and to eternity that of punishing you. Everything is ready. All the tortures are in motion. Enjoy yourself, my friend. Enjoy yourself and do not pass judgment. He bleeds both of her arms, and bled she is until she collapses. Now and again he stops the bleeding. Then he opens the wounds again. And this continues until she collapses. Enjoy yourself, my friend. Leave to nature the care of moving you as she pleases. And to eternity that of punishing you.
I want to talk about you and me. You always find me again. Only you would do that. Maybe it's stupid, but I just feel like we are connected, you and I. And I just need to know if you feel like me. Do you also feel there's something new every day? Like everything is changing, and so are we, right? And at the same time, I just have this feeling that we're supposed to be together. That maybe we're supposed to be forever, you know? I know I need you, and I think you need me too. We can stand the test of time if it feels this natural.
Here's why God permits it for the following reasons.
There's a presence going on. There's something.
A growing number of reports point to a virtual network of abusers who coerce young victims into harming themselves or others.
The person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
They are a product of the times, and these are bloodthirsty times.
Latest trend of child exploitation online, probably the most horrific that we've ever seen.
I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative.
I don't know what God's reasons are. Maybe his reasons are totally beyond us.
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
Online spaces that glorify violence, mass shootings, gore.
You can see the blackest black. There ain't no blacker black than that. Serial killers do on a small scale what governments do in a large one. Wasn't capable of this kind of behavior. I was surprised, even not dismayed, to find out that I could act in a manner so absolutely unaccustomed to anything I would even really dream of doing.
Power is all against all. Violence is the opposite. The extreme is one against all.
One has a cohesive, progressive economic platform that some hate. The other side wants to destroy democracy. There is no unity with people who scream at children over their parents' politics. There is no unity with someone who lies to them.
I didn't feel any regret. I didn't feel any. A serial killer comes about by circumstances and like a recipe, poverty, drugs, child abuse, these things that contribute to a person's frustration and anger, and at some point in life, it explodes.
Perhaps for Richard Ramirez that
Find her son James took his own life after becoming the victim of sextortion online.
what could his reason be? One just doesn't know what the reason is there.
Some of these regimes have been pretty quiet since September the 11th. But we know their true nature.
But when Satan goes to some extremes, then violence is necessary.
They're the young people. They're the college students. They're the professors who are teaching the college students. They're the media.
For the disintegration process, all public service actions with it, schools and police, mail and transportation.
No assaulting cops, spray painting the death threats that they throw at me, the violent intimidation.
Anybody can be a guard. It's harder to be on guard against the impulse to be sadistic.
Thank you, Oscar and Anton, for a thought-provoking, captivating, immersive audio experience of your perception of evil, I think I can say. It was a pleasure once again. And so now, this is the final stage of the evening where I invite all of you to join us at the reception at the Danish Institute, where again this year, Olympic Brewery very kindly donated Carlsberg beer, so please help us drink them and enjoy yourselves. Thank you. Stop here.